recording. And let's get Xcode up. All right. So first things first, we're going to create a whole new project from scratch. And what I'd like you to do is just kind of relax and watch. And then once the video is uploaded, I want you to replicate what I'm doing. We're going to do a little bit of CollectionView and a tiny bit of auto layout today so that you understand. So we're going to say CollectionView demo. Storyboard, obviously, and then next, and then create. All right. So the first two things that I typically do when I deal with CollectionViews is, I showed this last week, but I'm gonna kind of go over it again. Is I usually put everything on the timeline. So here or in Storyboard. So I'll just say CollectionView and that's weird. Let's undo just what it did here. And I'm going to drag it out and put it here and then stretch it all the way over. I'm going to delete the cell that's inside. And I will take auto layout and just basically set it to 0 all the way around so that there's no padding. All right, so that's the first thing. Next thing we'll do is we'll create a Cocoa Touch and we'll create a collection view and we'll check off also create nib. And here we'll call this for lack of names, we'll call them item cell here and we'll hit next and we'll hit create. Okay, so group with from selection. And I'm going to group this in cells. So that's there. I'm going to go ahead and group from selection here and say app. And then I'm going to now group from selection and say view controllers. And then what I'll do is typically take view controllers and put cells in there. Okay, so we only have one view controller. We only have one cell. So it's pretty straightforward. The next thing we need to do is we have to obviously IB outlet our collection views, our collection view from our main timeline. So we'll open this and then I'm hitting, what is that? Let me actually do, okay, cool. So I'm going to redo that. I'm going to record my screen, my shortcut so you can see. So that should now, let's do here and here. Okay. So, and what I typically do is have it side by side. You don't have to do this. You could go into view controller, create an outlet and go to main and then connect it. But I typically like to open up by hitting the option key and then selecting the file, which will give you a open up the secondary file that you want to do. And then in here, all I got to do is hit control drag over to my file and then say collection view. Sorry, could not insert connection, cancel. What the heck did I do? Oh, I probably didn't. Collection view. Could not insert, could not find information on the class name view controller. Oh, weird. Yeah, why can't it find? Cannot find view controller. All right. Don't know why it's saying that, so I'm going to redo it because that is not correct. So let's do a new project, app, collection view. We'll just do the same name and hit next and create and replace. I won't structure. It may have just been like, I don't know why it even did that, because it should not have. That should have worked perfectly fine, but who knows? All right, so we'll go to collection view. I think I know what I did. I think when I hit return, it messed it up, and then I deleted it, so it probably did that. I'm almost positive that's what happened. So here, there, delete. So we'll do main and then, main and then collection view. And then we will control drag here and do collection view. Boom. That's what happened. I messed up when I hit return last time. So now we have a good thing here. Our view is done there, and then I'll still do the same thing. I'm gonna do this as app, this as view controllers, and then here, new group, we'll call this cells, and then we're gonna create a new cell for Cocoa Touch, and we're going to call it item cell. Cancel. Going too fast. Create the nib, hit next, and create. So now we have our cell and we have our collection view set up. We can't do anything right now because obviously collection view is just an outlet and nothing is actually created. So this is where we will do it. So this is how I set up everything. I like creating, first of all, view did load as a standard. When you work for a company, you should never really write anything in here. I typically only write functions. You will see thousands of tutorials where people write code in view did load, and it is definitely not where code should be. Number one, if you want to write something in view did load, using a method tells somebody what it's doing. So I typically set up every project I do with an initialize method, and then I create the initialize method. Okay. And now what I do is I typically use a method to set up my collection view. So anything that has to do with functionality that's the same, I group it into a function. So here we have set up collection view here, and that's good. Okay. So once we have our setup collection view, we have a couple of things that we need to do. So we could do things we could set up our delegates and our data source, and we can IB outlet them, but it's just simple to do it here. So self.collectionView.dataSource equals self. And now once we do this, we're going to get an error. Does anyone know why we get an error? Because this is a common Swift UI, Swift thing. Sorry, I'm always saying Swift UI, so that's why. Can someone tell me why this is giving me an error? Correct. So we have every time we do collection views or table views, the same thing happens. So if you're familiar with table view, it's the same concept. We have to implement our data source for the collection view. And I typically use extensions to do this. So You could write it in here and you could do comma and then you could do this UI collection view data source, right? But you then start to get where to the point where your data source, then your delegate, then your next item that you need to do, it starts to become a lot, and now your file's getting heavy. So what I like to do is just create an extension that will section it off, and I'll say view controller and then UI collection view data source here. And now the error will go away. And so in here, we have, obviously, it's complaining now that we have to implement methods. So just like table views, collection views have two methods that you have to implement. So if we go into view data source, we can see this. And if you forget, it's just command click. So here you'll see the first function says collection view number of items in section. You see function. You notice nothing's at the beginning. Collection view cell for item. If you scroll down, you'll see every other function in this particular class has optional. So it's telling us these two are required and the rest are optional. So knowing that these two are required, we have to implement number of items in section and we have to implement cell for item at index path in order for our cell to work. So what I usually do is this, I just start typing num. And this is the same two implementation you need for table views. The only difference is they're named slightly different, but the idea is still the same. So if you've done table views before, this right here should be familiar to you anyways. So we have number of items in section. And if we type collection view, cell for item at index path. So that's each item that gets created. So for here, we need to pass some data. So for now, we're going to say 0. It's just kind of so it can get rid of the code. We have our cell. So we need to do some stuff to our cell first to make it work, and we will work on that. But while we're here, let's go ahead and see here where the item is selected here, and you'll see item identifier. Here, I don't actually use this method, but for now, when I'm doing it this way, this is the way I'm doing it. When we get farther and more advanced, I'll show you a more efficient way of what we can do. So item cell gets named. So I'm just going to put item cell in here, and then I'm going to take this and do a view. And I'm going to drag a view out and put it in here. And I'm not going to worry about size. I'm not going to do anything other than just setting these dimensions here. So it's just putting the constraint on it. So no matter what I do, the view gets filled with this color. Okay, so nothing special. Coming back to here, I did this wrong. This should be in setup collection view. And then here we call setup collection view. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we have this cell for row and we have this. So let's create an array of data. So we're going to say, just because you don't need to see me typing A, B, C, D, E, or F, G. So we're going to say var data equals this array. So everyone should understand this. I have a string of array A, B through I. Okay. And so we can now say how many items in the section. All we have to do is say data.count. And then we just need to reference our nib. Before we reference our nib, we actually have to register our nib. So remembering that, sometimes you won't. Actually, I won't even register. I'm going to just do the nib, and then you'll see, just so that you can see what happens when you get errors. Self.collectionView. Sorry, this is wrong. So we need to implement our cell. So we're going to say let cell is equal to CollectionView.DQ reuse identifier. And then here we're going to say item cell. for index path. Index path as index path. And then as item cell. So this is kind of pretty basically the same thing you would do for a table view. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're not going to worry about setting anything, but we just need to return the cell. So this is basic, just setting up the cell, making sure it returns. We're making sure that it counts it sees the number of data in our cell. And then the last thing that we really need to implement really is nothing. We could go here, but we are missing something. So let's see what happens when we run it. And we have a crash. Okay, so I already know the reason, but basically anytime we use a cell that's a nib, even if it's in the storyboard, we have to register the nib. So it doesn't know what it is until we register. So in here, we're going to say self CollectionView.register, and then we're going to do cell class, and then here UI nib with nib name. Oh, this brings back memories. Item cell. Bundle is nil. And then the reuse identifier. Does anyone remember what I put in there? It's on the screen. Anyone other than Mindy? I knew you were going to answer. Don't bail them out. Drake, tell me what's supposed to be in this identifier. Yes, I don't care. Yes, item cell. So remember, you did do it in storyboard. So here, if we go back to item cell here and I select it, this is the identifier. This is the identifier it wants. So in here, we give it the item cell. If I give it the wrong one and then I try to run it, it's now going to complain that it doesn't know. It's still telling me that I haven't registered because I still haven't put it in right. So this is important. So we'll then save it and we'll run it again. And now we have no crashes, right? And if we look at here, we don't have anything, at least we don't appear to, but if I switch to the color scheme, still don't have anything. So what's going on? So right now our collection view is set up, but we don't actually have anything working. So what we need to do is we have to do some minor things and this will work. So we're going to, what should we do next? So data source has been done. I don't need to do delegate, but let's get it to start displaying. So the next thing we have to do is up here, we're going to actually implement UI collection view delegate flow layout. Now, the reason that I'm implementing this here is because I'm going to just use my setup collection view to create it. And so I have to implement it for it to work. So here, what we'll do is we'll just create a layout. Oops. Var layout and UI collection view flow layout equals to UI collection view flow layout. All right. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to say layout item size is equal to CG size. And we're going to set the width and the height and we're going to say 125, 125. And we're now going to do CollectionView dot CollectionView layout equals layout. And we'll save it and we'll run it. And it's complaining because this should be a let. Maybe? I don't know why. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, it says let, but that doesn't make any sense. Item size. We'll leave it a var. I don't think that's right. So I'm going to stick with my guns on that one because we have more stuff to use. Okay, so set up collection view, everything is done there. Let's see what else is going on. Index cell. It should actually be displaying. I think I know what the problem is. I used a view that probably changes colors based off of dark mode and light mode. Yep. So let me change this to dark gray. And let's run it. There we go. Okay. So let's go back. That's why that wasn't working. So we're going to take this out of the equation for just a second. We're going to run it and we're going to see what's happening because now we should see boxes, but they're different. Okay. So this is the typical way CollectionView works. And until you actually give it size and do anything, this is how the default behavior becomes. So when we add flow layout, we're basically saying we're telling it what we want it to do. And so this is how this works. So this is how we're able to give it the sizes that we're looking for. But as you can see, when we use it, it doesn't really, it's weird. Like, why isn't it filling? Why is it pushing to the right? Again, this was old school collection views and they were a pain in the butt to work with. And that's why no one used them. And that's probably why people were like, oh, it's easier to do use table views, which technically table views are a little bit easier. But once you get over the hurdle, it becomes easier. So how do we fix that? So we could actually do what's called layout dot minimum inter item spacing. It is horribly named. We're going to say it's 5. And then layout dot minimum line spacing, we're going to say is 8. So now we'll save and we'll run it. And now we get a little bit better of what we're actually looking for. So a grid that actually works. And obviously, because of the size, it's filling enough of the space. But what ends up happening is once you start experimenting with like sizes, this starts to become a bit of a problem. And we're not really going to focus on that. But I really just want you to understand the basic setup and how to start. So for now, we'll deal with this and I think this is fine. And the only thing we want to do is we want to display some text in the item cell. So let's go into item cell and we have no IB outlet and we have nothing. So we should fix that. So let's go here. I'm going to resize this to, let's say 150 by 150. 150 by 150. Now the error should go away and then we're going to add a label. So we'll take it here and say label and we'll drag it into here, there. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to keep this in the middle, but I want the label to grow with the size of the box. So in order to do that, I just don't set a height or a width. Now, the caveat for height is different, and I'll show you in just a second why. But for now, all I want to do is I want the label to go the entire span of this box with some padding. So I'm going to say left 10, right 10. Boom. So now it's complaining because I haven't satisfied enough for it to be able to work. Now I need it to say I want it to be horizontally and vertically in the center. So if I go to the next constraint and say horizontally and vertically add constraint, now it works with the exception of multi-line. Okay. So if this decides to go to multi-line, this label will not work and we have to fix it. So for now, we're not going to worry about it. We will look at it in just a second. So here we're going to just adjust it so that the text is in the middle. We're going to then run it and now we're going to see label. Boom. Okay. So now that we see label, how do we get something into it? Well, let's create a function here and we're going to say setup. We can do set data is probably good. We're going to do underscore value string. And then now we just need to connect the outlet. So we're going to open the item. We're going to hit option and we're going to open both views. And then we're going to do our magical control drag. Oops. We're going to do the control drag over here. And I do my labels as LBL and then whatever the label is. I like using this method because this lets me know what the heck it is when I'm not in the view. So some people will just put title, or some may, like, even for images, for image, I usually typically use IMG. For buttons, I typically use BTN. And those are really probably the most of the ones I use, but these are the ones, the prefixes I put on these because it makes it easier for me to know down the road, especially if I come back into the project later. I don't have to remember which one of the labels I have. I can just start typing .lbl and that will give me all of the stuff I want. So here we'll go LBL title text equals value. Okay. So that's there. Now, if we run it again, we still don't have any change. Why? Because we haven't actually passed anything here. So now what we have to do is in our collection view cell for item at index path, we just have to give it the data. So we're going to say set data, and then we're going to pass the value. So in here, we're going to say data bracket index path. And with items, I mean, with collection view, we actually have items and rows. So the value of the item element at index path, the element of the row at index path. And honestly, I don't think anyone really knows. I'm sure there's a purpose for them. I don't remember them. And it's really honestly not that important, but I think you should know it. So that'll be your homework and then you can tell me. All right. So now if I hit stop and rerun it, we now have our alphabets displaying into here. Let's go in and let's do some changes. So we can also take this and make custom. We can then change the font to my favorite, Avenir Next Condensed. We can say that it's bold. We can say that this is 60 and here. So I'm not going to do it technically for you. I mean, in here, but what I'm going to do is show you how. So let's say that this label needs to continue to the next line and you want to have multiple lines. Well, if you notice, we only have one line. So what we should do is say 99. Okay. Well, that messes up our label. So what we should do is we should undo. And actually, let's undo the font and fix it. So right now we have the font here. We should put a height on this. Well, if I put a height on it, let's say 24, right? Then if I do a constraint and I change this to 60, almost done, you're going to get this because I have a height on it. So how do I fix that? Well, if you select the constraint, here you see the relation, it says equal. Well, we can change that to say greater than or equal to, and now it flexes. So basically it'll show one line if it needs, but it'll flex for the amount of content that it needs in this particular instance. So setting the constraint to greater than or equal, and then changing the number of lines here to 99. Oops. We now have a way for us to do some to fix it so that this works. And right now, this is kind of donkey since we're just displaying text. So here it's not going to do it, but it will grow, it'll still be centered, and it'll work perfectly fine. So really, really basic stuff as far as collection views go. If we wanted to add a delegate method, we can add an extension, and we can say view controller, and we can say UI collection view delegate. And then in here, we could do, we can look for it because I never remember, but I know what I want. And sometimes so this is did select item at, and every now and then I used to do like did deselect because I wasn't really looking and I was doing it quick. And then I'm like, why isn't this working? And it's because there is a did deselect. So here did select, and then we can print the data bracket, and then index path dot, we'll say, just so that you can see item works as well. And we'll run it, and we'll run here. And then in the console, we're not getting anything. Why? Does anyone remember why I'm not getting anything? This is as a table view thing too. Hint number, line 19. Okay, so I'm not setting the delegate, so it's why it's not working. So if I hit save and run it, and now I'm getting a console printout of the letter that I select. All right. Questions? I did that in like 20 something minutes. because that because sometimes it's not customizable. So let's say you needed to add something extra to your view. If you have the one that's built in, you can't build around it. So for example, if I wanted to have like some added feature, added label here, or added design, so let's say I go into here and do view and then drag it out, and let's change the color so you can see it, and then put it in here and then do it there, and then I align it here. So this, it lets me have flexibility with having to be able to change it. The collection view doesn't really give me, it doesn't let me, first of all, it doesn't let you do this, and secondly, I just use this by default, even if I don't need to customize it, because if I do, then I'd have to delete it and then re-add it and then do all the code all over again, rather than just using this. So I typically use this version because it just allows me more customization than doing the controller version. Yes. Anyone else? All right then. Well, I am done. Um, I am going to upload this video to YouTube, and I will add everyone's email again, and I will post a link to it by end of day so that you can use it. And what I would say is by next week, I want you to show me a very similar concept, but I want 2 lines instead of one. So I don't care what the view looks like. All I want is 2 lines and grid. So you can use everything else that I like. You can have everything that I'm doing in mine, but with the exception of your data needs to be something that will display minimum at least 2 lines for 1 or 2 of the items. All of them don't need to have 2 lines, but I need you to actually give me more than 1 line is all I really want. Okay. So I will post this again, and I will put a next week we'll go over it. For now, I'm not gonna put a an assignment in Git Classroom, but we will next week. I will next week once I go over it and show you how it works. Yes, I did. That is correct, Zach. So so all I need is you to do this same thing, implement your own, and then show me 2 lines of code. So the only real major difference is your data here will be longer, and your cell will be changed to make it so that it fits 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines. Okay. And that's it. So you guys are good to go. Unless you have any questions, you can hang. I'll stay for a second. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Thursday for our next one. Sounds good.